Inko felt like a terrible mother. She left her son, her only son, all the way in another county. And now he had fallen sick. "Grandma?" Fu said over the phone. "Grandma, are you okay?" Fu, the dear sweet boy, had been the one to notify her of Izuku's collapse. Seeing as he was the only one of the children who wasn't freaking out, who had also met Inko. Inko wanted to say that she was okay, but she was just so overwhelmed at the moment, that all she could do was balk like a fish. "Grandma, do we need to call an ambulance for you too?" Fu asked her. No dear. Inko managed to say, pulling herself together just enough to finish the conversion. I just need a second. How are all the other children? Most of them are crying. Only 5 of us are keeping everything together right now. But the pussycats are coming to help out until we can figure out what to do. Fu explained to her. Oh, dear. Inko bit her lip. She may not have gotten to know all the kids that were now under Izuku's care, but the ones she did know, loved their new father with all their hearts. She could only imagine the heartbreak they were going through right now. "I'll try to come back as soon as I can. I know it's a lot to ask, but please keep everything together until then. We're trying, Grandma." Fu sighed. Then in the background, Inko heard something break. "Oh. I have to go. Sanson broke something again. Goodbye, Fu. I love you." Inko told him. "I love you too, Grandma," Fu said, before hanging up. Immediately once the conversation was done, Inko stood up from her desk and yelled at her office staff. "Everyone, I'll be going back home for a while. My son needs me. Wild pussy cats." It was a peaceful morning at Pussycats H.Q, which was given a lot of inappropriate names that they refused to acknowledge. The pussycats themselves were sitting back in their living room, enjoying some nice, freshly made coffee. Mandalay leaned back into the couch. "So nice. After so much work we finally get a vacation." Pixie Bob stretched out on the couch, much like a cat. Tiger and Ragdoll's relaxed sighs were their response to that. Pixie Bob turned to Mandalay. "Hey, you think we can pawn Koda off on Izuku and have a real vacation?" Mandalay turned and gave her teammate a soft glare. "I heard that, pedo cat," Koda said as he walked into the room. "But that's actually a good idea. At least I like being there." Mandalay sighed. Koda's time with Izuku has dulled Koda's edge, so at the very least he wasn't going around looking like he'd stab anyone who looked at him wrong. Now he just looked like he hated everything and everyone around him. Which was true in most situations. "Well, I was hoping we could spend a bit more time together since now I have some free time," Mandalay told him hopefully, getting the expected look of disgust from Koda. "Brrrr." Mandalay took out her vibrating phone and looked at who was calling. It's Izuku. That's weird. He rarely calls." She pressed accept and then held up the phone to her ear. Meanwhile, Koda was just hoping that Izuku was calling to get him out of this lame house. "What?" Mandalay suddenly shouted, startling everyone else in the room. Everyone looked at Mandalay and saw a fearful expression on her face. And immediately a concerned feeling filled the room, most notably in Koda. They watched as Mandalay listened intently for a while, before saying, "Right. We'll be there as soon as we can." Mandalay hung up and looked at everyone. Izuku collapsed and had to go to the hospital. Everyone's expressions shifted into concern, while Koda looked downright terrified. "Oh my god, is he okay?" Pixie Bob was the first to ask. "They don't know. They still haven't heard back from the hospital, so they don't know what his condition is." Mandalay, as a pro-hero, has been in this situation many times before. Someone is taken to the hospital, and the waiting period where you don't know what's going on, it's the worst part. She can't even imagine how the kids feel going through this. Speaking of kids, she turned her attention to Koda, because he had also been in this situation before, and it ended with his parents being dead. And predictably, it looked like Koda was going through a PTSD flashback currently, and Mandalay wasn't sure what to do about it. He wrote down that if anything were to happen to him and no one else was around, that he'd like us to help take care of the children until they could work something out, Mandalay explained. "But, our vacation." Pixie Bob looked like she was going to cry. Come Pixie. The kittens need us." Ragdoll told her. "Vacation or not. We're still heroes, and right now there are some children in need." Tiger added. Pixie Bob mourned her now lost days off. "Fine. Let's go help the kitten." Mandalay's eyes never left Koda. She felt like she should reassure him somehow. Say that Izuku was going to be okay. But she already knew what his response would be, having lived with him long enough. That's what they said about my parents. Ochako. Ochako felt like something was off. Which she shouldn't, because right now her and the girls of 1A were hanging out, having a sleepover at Toru's house. She should be having a blast, and she was. But there was just this nagging feeling in the back of her head, that something was wrong, and it involved Izuku. Now to be fair, it was just a feeling. She had no real reason to think this other than Izuku's tendency to overwork himself, and while she hadn't heard anything from him in a little while, that was mostly because Izuku thought of himself as a blight on everyone's existence and never called or texted because he thought it would disturb them. Speaking of Izuku, hey Uraraka, how's your boyfriend? Mina asked with a huge shit-eating grin. Ugh, Mina, if I have to say this again, I'm gonna send you to the moon. He's not my boyfriend. Me and Izuku are just really good friends. Ochako shouted with embarrassment. Op! She never said Izuku. Toru pointed out. Come on, we all know what Mina meant. Sue sighed. Aren't you guys tired of this yet? Yeah, it's like every other time we meet up. Ochako complained, her face still red. Never! Toru and Mina shouted. To be fair, Midoriya is an interesting topic, Momo spoke up. It still bothers me that our government has to rely on a 15-year-old boy to do something they themselves should be capable of. When clearly he needs therapy. Yeah, it still confuses me how the hell that happened, Jiro added. Brrrr. The girls looked at one of Toru's desks, where all their phones were placed, and saw that Ochiko's phone was ringing. It was easy to know which one was hers because she was the only one with a flip phone. $5 it's Midoriya. Mina shouted out eagerly. Ochako sighed and got up to see who it was. It was Izuku. Of all the times to call, Ochako whispered, before getting a bit confused. But why is he calling? Not wanting to keep Izuku waiting, Ochako picked up the phone. Hey, Izuku. Ochako greeted in her usual friendly voice. Knew it. Mina shouted out in the background. Hey, Ochako. Fu was the one on the phone. Not Izuku. I have bad news. Immediately a pang of fear filled her. Wait, what's wrong? Where is Izuku? In the back, all the girls looked confused. And a bit concerned. He got sick, Fu explained. We found him, bleeding in his office. And he wasn't waking up. It felt like a bucket of cold water splashed onto her at that moment, and then hit her in the gut. What? Ochako was quiet, her voice fearful, more fearful than the girls had ever heard her before. And instantly they knew something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. He's at the hospital. We don't know what's happening with him yet. Fu explained. That's... Ochako was a bit overwhelmed. She didn't know what to say. Ochako? What's wrong? Sue got up to check on her best friend and saw that she was tearing up a bit. Ochako stuttered. I'll give you some time, Fu told her. And I'll call you when we get news about Dad. Goodbye. And with that, he hung up. Ochako? Ochako, what's wrong? Sue kept asking her, putting an arm around her to try and comfort her from whatever was happening. Uraraka, what happened? Momo and the rest of the girls soon joined in crowding around her to see what the heck happened. It's Izuku, he's in the hospital. Ochako eventually said after pulling herself back together. They don't know what happened, but he must have overworked himself. I kept telling him, over and over, to hire some employees. And he didn't listen. Him and his freaking trust issues. Oh my god, I am going to kill Bakugo. All the girls seemed a bit taken aback by this. While I do agree that it's likely Midoriya's affliction was caused by overwork and that Bakugo did play a large part in developing his trust issues, violence won't fix this, Momo told her. Ochako knew this, but she didn't really know what would fix the situation, and she was really upset and wanted a reason to punch Bakugo. I think you should sit down, Sue told her. The girls brought her to a chair and had her sit down. They told her that Izuku would be fine. And Ochako agreed, because she had to believe that that was true. UA staff. The staff members of UA had gathered in the meeting room after hearing about Izuku's collapse. So we're all in agreement that that took way longer than it should have. Midnight spoke first. Yeah, hats off to Midoriya, he sure has the endurance of a hero. Snipe could only imagine doing as much paperwork as Izuku did in hell. Can we focus? 13 told everyone, before turning to Nizu. Nizu, do you know what exactly is wrong with him? What's his status? I'll be honest, I didn't expect him to be physically able to continue working as he did. It is in fact rather impressive. Nizu admitted. It also means that the fallout was worse than what was expected. Although given Midoriya's sheer willpower, I doubt he'll let this kill him. That being said, DOC is on top of the situation, and Midoriya is receiving the best healthcare he can get. When he recovers we should talk to him about 1A assisting him. At this point, I don't think he can refuse. And if he tries we'll send in Uraraka to convince him otherwise, Aizawa added. The teachers muttered agreements, except for All Might, who was mostly silent. Yagi, you look like someone shot your dog, or gave another valid criticism of America, Aizawa said to All Might, giving him his usual deadpan look. It's just, is this my fault? All Might asked somberly. A lot of things are your fault, you're gonna have to be more specific, Aizawa asked. Young Midoriya overworking himself. I feel like, as his role model, I may have inspired that behavior. All Might was aware that he abused his body. I mean look at him. He coughed up an alarming amount of blood every day, and now it seemed like Izuku was starting to do the same. I mean yes, but what about it? What do you regret saving all those people? Aizawa raised an eyebrow. Don't start with the self-deprecation Yagi, he copied that from you too. This was mostly the fault of Midoriya himself, and the quirkist environment that destroyed his sense of self-worth. I suppose, I just feel like I could have said something to him. All Might sighed. It's probably a good thing you didn't, Niza said. After all, your words wouldn't have mattered much if you still went around being a massive hypocrite. You know better than anyone, actions speak louder than words.